Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, January the 31st, 2024. So today my main topic is going to be the USA, with particular reference to its foreign policy and what is going on in terms of how America is relating to the rest of the world, because it seems to me that things are starting to get quite bad. It seems there is a group in Washington that wants to take America to war with some of its enemies. It's already kind of at war with Russia through its Ukrainian proxy. The drums of war are also sort of beating in terms of Iran and the Middle East. And things are certainly looking difficult. And this underlines my long-standing view. Before Ukraine, when I was just looking at the horoscope of Joe Biden and the horoscope of the inauguration of Joe Biden, that clearly from a foreign policy perspective, the Biden regime is completely disastrous. Now, that doesn't mean to say that previous regimes didn't cause damage in their own way, whether they're Democrat or Republican. For example, George Bush Jr. Getting involved in his Iraq War. Of course, Obama stirring up the Middle East in 2011 in the wake of the Arab Spring, destabilizing Libya and Syria, causing a massive refugee crisis because of his intervention in Syria. And so, it's not good. But right now it's looking particularly bad. And I want to look at the situation. I want to go over Biden's sort of inauguration chart, his chart. I want to consider what's going on this year. I mean, in a general sense, I will be going into more detail at a later stage, but I just want to give you an idea about, what seems to be going on in 2024 and how the situation now, it's not necessarily, it is not going to get any better, but the situation probably over the summer is arguably worse than it is now. So it's really something to watch out for. But before I do that, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, January the 31st, 2024. So top right, that is Joe Biden. I do want to talk about his chart. And things don't look too good for his regime. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to lose the election yet. I haven't made my official prediction about what's going to happen in November. I might even sit on the fence. I'm still working out what I should do, whether it's worth making a prediction. But okay, so as far as the chart is concerned, the moon is still in Libra. The moon, you can see, is conjunct the south node in Libra. So when you've got the moon conjunct the south node, there is always a danger of going back to the past. The past being too keen, perhaps, to compromise. At least that's the easy thing to do, isn't it, with the south node in Libra? The moon is about how we emotionally respond to the situation. And our emotional response is to look for peace. We want to be in harmony with the world around us. We don't want to have arguments. But is that always the right thing to do? If we don't raise issues, then things can fester. And so festering could be a problem today. Now, where we should be going, if you look at the North Node, it's actually conjunct Chiron. I mean, okay, it's not exact today, but in a broad sense, North Node is conjunct Chiron in Aries, and with the Moon conjunct the South Node, there's a reminder that what we should be doing is trying harder to take the initiative. We should be quite open about our true feelings, and that may require some courage. Courage maybe in terms of standing up for other people. That could be North Node conjunct Chiron. Chiron is, traditionally the wounded healer. North Node is where we should be going. We should be trying to heal the people and people around us, society around us. And in the process, that might require courage. That might mean standing up for the underdog. But the Moon conjunct the South Node is drawing us in an opposite direction. It's asking us to keep the peace. Don't ask difficult questions. But that's the wrong thing to do, at least in a broad sense. Of course, in a personal and selfish sense, maybe we feel that is the right thing to do. But we have to look at the situation and perhaps make a moral judgment. The Moon is not just conjunct the South Node, but it is fairly close to a square of Venus. So you've got Moon square Venus is an aspect that can be a bit lazy, actually. I know that Venus is in Capricorn, but there's a certain tendency to do nothing or to just enjoy ourselves. Relax on the beach. I don't know where you'd be relaxing on the beach. In the northern hemisphere, it's the winter, but I suppose there may be places you can relax on the beach. But not inclined to do very much. Perhaps enjoy yourself with food and entertainment. You could do that, but I think overall it wouldn't be particularly satisfactory. Another thing to point out is that the sun at 11:18 Aquarius is making a semi-square aspect to Neptune. Sun semi-square Neptune is probably not a good aspect. It encourages us to be a bit sloppy in terms of how we are interacting with the world. We might just miss important details. We just might get confused. We might just not ask important questions, and we could just end up making mistakes with Sun semi-square Neptune. And in a general sense, if you with this Sun semi-square Neptune, it may damage the way we assert ourselves. We may find that something is just weakening us. We might have all these big ideas to move forward in the world, but somehow our impact just gets weakened. And I think we need to be aware of that. So possibly today, don't expect big things. Though I suppose I should say that the Moon is trine the Sun. That's probably the best thing going on today. The Moon is in Libra. It's trine the Sun in Aquarius. Two air signs. Sun and Moon in fortunate aspect. That is great. The Sun and Moon are the most important bodies in the sky. So if we do what is natural, we can make good progress, and we can actually find balance. Balance with the Sun and Moon is balance between the masculine and the feminine, the negative and the positive. So we can find harmony around us. That harmony is not necessarily emotional harmony. We don't have to get too close to people emotionally, because with the Sun and Moon and air signs, it's more about conversational harmony, the harmony of ideas. Even if we have strong disagreements with another person, we can maybe agree to differ. We can perhaps focus on our intellectual common ground. So that Sun Moon trine is pretty fortunate. In a way, it saves the day. Finally, I should point out that the Moon is at around 15 Libra. you can see from the perspective of noon New York, the moon is at 16 Libra. So the moon crossed the 15 Libra line. It crossed the 15 Libra line late in the morning in the USA. So what does that mean? Why am I talking about 15 Libra? Well, 15 Libra, that is the beginning of the Via Combusta. It happens every month, the Via Combusta, but the Via Combusta is the flaming path. It's a time when things just don't happen as expected. And the moon will stay in the Via Combusta for a couple of days. The very beginning of a Via Combusta today isn't so bad because the moon is in Libra. Because the Via Combusta, it spans the part of the sky between 15 Libra, 15 Scorpio, and the part between 0 Scorpio and 15 Scorpio tends to be more chaotic than the part in Libra. But still, it's a time over the next couple of days when we should expect things not to go to plan. So if you're making plans, allow plenty of flexibility. Don't assume that tight deadlines can be met. Yes, we may be able to achieve our aims, but perhaps not quite in the way we expect. So that's the broad picture. I'm now going to look at this broad picture in terms of the 12 signs. I'm probably not going to go on and on as much as usual, simply because from an astrological point of view, there is not a great deal going on today. I mean, it's not such a hectic day, at least all things being equal, just broadly looking at the planets. There aren't any major aspects there, but still, we'll see what happens. Okay, so these are my star sign forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, January the 31st, 2024. Aries. It's another day, Aries, when you do need to consider other people. You can't really avoid them. I know that Aries is an independent-minded sign. You like to do things your way, but when the moon is in Libra, it can be difficult. You may find that you do have to follow other people's lead, but you then have to ask the question, is that the right thing to do? Maybe not. Your first impulses are probably correct. So if you feel there's something you want to do in a particular way, then possibly you should consider following that impulse. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to completely ignore other people. Yes, you have to consider other people. If you kind of pretend that you're the only person on the planet, you're not going to achieve very much. So you have to consider other people, but at the same time, you have to realize that other people and the kind of pressures you're being put under to act in a particular way are, in a way, regressive. They are something from the past, and you need to create your own path, but in such a way that the people around you don't hold you back, don't disrupt you, and perhaps you have to give something away, but not give everything away. And I should point out, as I did in my main piece for today, that the North Node is in Aries, and the North Node is conjunct Chiron. Okay, it's not something just for today. North Node and Chiron stay in Aries for a long time, relatively speaking. But with the Moon conjunct the South Node in Libra, it's possibly a reminder that in some respects your mission is not just to be assertive, but to do things that can make the world a better place. Chiron is about healing things that are kind of ill, sick, broken. So consider how you can make the world a better place, and maybe perhaps you should aim today to at least help one person. Find one person who's got a problem and sort the problem out. Just one person. It can be as trivial as you like, but just make that your aim. And I think then it should be quite a good day. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, relationships can work out. I mean, they should work out. You know, Moon is in Libra. Libra is your opposite sign. But every aspect of your various relationships has to be on your terms. It's not a time to compromise. So don't feel that relationships are so important that you need to compromise who you are. You need to always keep in mind your priority and your identity. And you may actually find that some of the people close to you are just not really on your wavelength. Their priorities may just be wrong. They may be just interested in doing nothing in particular. There's a certain laziness, actually, to the people around you, which is kind of disappointing. You might find that there are people who you normally respect, perhaps at work, in business. You normally respect. You think they're worthy people. You like to listen to what they say. They seem to usually get it right. But today, they're just not on great form. They seem distracted. And yes, they may even seem lazy. And that's not to say that they are lazy, but that's something you need to be aware of. But yeah, overall, relationships needs to happen on your terms, or not at all. Of course, if you are lazy, perhaps intellectually lazy, or you're morally lazy, then relationships can work fine. Yeah, you can have a great time with other people, but it's not the right thing to do. So it's up to you. One final point. I am not saying that today is all about isolation. It certainly isn't. It's about meeting people on your terms. It's about networking on your terms. There seems little doubt that through your assertive behavior, you can mix with and meet lots of different people and really make an impact. So it may be that you need to send messages to 10, 20, 30 people, lots of people, just telling everyone who you are, what your plans are, what your ideals are. A lot of people might not have a clue what you're talking about, but somewhere along the line, your message will stick, and you'll get some great feedback. So Aries, that's it. It's a day when you've got things to do. There are going to be plenty of temptations and distractions to leave the path, but Aries, I think you know what is required, and I'm confident that you will go and do it. Taurus, you may be in a situation where you waste a lot of time. It can happen. This would be a shame, of course. Venus is your ruling planet. It's in Capricorn. That should be great. Venus in Capricorn is usually very focused. It understands what it's supposed to be doing. There's the material dimension is important from a money business point of view. You can cover a lot of ground, but somehow there are distractions. I think that these distractions may relate actually to small details that really are not important. Things that don't have to be done. And so what can happen, Taurus, is that you can get your priorities completely wrong. That is a real danger. And I think part of what's going on, Taurus, is yes, you can see the big picture. almost in a sort of a spiritual and philosophical sense. Yet part of you don't want to engage with it. It just seems a little too complicated, a little too overwhelming. So, rather than look up into the heavens, it might seem simpler to, I don't know, just sort out some unimportant mess around you. You might want to clean something up but doesn't need to be cleaned up. You might want to reorganize something, and you're not actually doing it in a useful way. You're doing it in a way because you're trying to avoid something. So consider, what are you trying to avoid? I know you are a Taurus, stubborn Taurus, get set in your ways. Sometimes Taurus doesn't like to be perturbed by big ideas, and I think that might be something that's going on today. So there's a challenge here. What are you being asked to do? What are you being asked to think about? What does the universe actually want you to do? It certainly doesn't want you to spend all day tidying things up. That would be a wasted day. It wants you, in some respects, to take the plunge, to engage with something that is larger than yourself. So Taurus, I think you have a pretty good idea about what needs to be done. And one other warning: there may be a temptation, Taurus, to get involved in some crazy, ill-judged initiative, or it might be a sudden decision on your part that you've got to use a lot of force in one particular way, and you might think it's really important. I think you'd be mistaken. So don't throw all your energy into one little thing that makes you angry. That would be a bad idea. It's a better idea to focus on something broader than yourself. And a little bit of chaos might not be such a bad thing, Taurus. A bit of chaos, because where there's chaos, you've got a sense of the infinity. And perhaps that's something, Taurus, that you need in your life. Of course, I don't want to suggest that you go over the top. You do need a bit of order, but not too much order. You cannot order the cosmos. The cosmos is much bigger than that. Gemini, it is not a bad day. In the sense that you can be playfully creative. That's nice. You can do things your way. You can create things your way. But I think you have to understand that creativity for its own sake is not necessarily particularly useful. I mean, I know that the word creativity is supposed to be good. It's a virtue to be creative, isn't it? But is it always a virtue to be creative, or is it just a sense in which we like to use this word creative? We put creativity on everything, and maybe you're doing something right now that you think is creative, but actually it's not creative at all. It's actually rather rote, routine, going through the motions. Creative as in, one of those, like a colouring book where you colour in the spaces, and the picture sort of slowly comes together as you use lots of different coloured pencils or ink and so forth. Creativity in that way. Be careful. You don't want to get involved in stupid creativity. And just because something has a label of creative does not mean it is necessarily creative. Instead, you need to think about probably society at large. What does creativity mean in terms of you and society, and how you can improve the world around you. And that is going to be that's going to be tough, but you have to consider that. It also relates to your friends. Your friends and people you have been in touch with recently have actually been making suggestions, and maybe you haven't been listening to them. Geminis are actually quite good at not listening. How does it work? Well, Geminis are sort of thinking about something else. They're probably often thinking about themselves. I'm a Gemini, by the way. They're thinking about themselves, and they hear the words, but they don't really listen. They don't really take it on board. But someone is telling you something. Probably a friend or an associate, a colleague are telling you something important. Are you listening? You've got to listen. Okay, you probably won't listen, but you should be listening, because you're being told something. And you're actually being told about perhaps real creativity. You're being reminded about the thing that you really can do, the thing you're really good at. And it's something that I think has a social dimension, but it also represents something constructive about your future, if you're able to take it on board. At the same time, be very careful with ideas, because at the moment there's a danger that some of your ideas, perhaps which you've developed yourself, are actually based on complete deception. They're really going absolutely nowhere, and so you do have to be careful there. If you have a good idea, particularly if it's a sort of philosophical idea, something about the way the world should be organized, and you're really into this idea, then consider the possibility that it's nonsense. But I suppose I should be trying to end on a positive note. The moon is in Libra. It's an air sign. The moon is trine the sun in Aquarius. That's an air sign. Now, Gemini is an air sign. Although there are no planets in Gemini, at least no regular planets, I'm sure there are all sorts of asteroids and other celestial garbage in Gemini, but the main planets, sun and moon, the two most important planets, are in air signs, and they actually have an impact on you, on Gemini. So if you are a mature and enlightened Gemini, things can really start moving. You can engage with the right kind of creativity. Creativity, not just the sort of fake creativity that I was talking about, but something that relates to the world in general. You can engage with ideas, not the fake ideas that I've just been talking about, not the deceptive ideas, but something bigger than yourself that is a true expression of who you are, and it can come together. But Gemini, you just have to be really sensitive. You might mess it up. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the opportunity is there. But Gemini, you just have to look for it, and you have to be very open-minded, and you have to be self-critical. And if you can do all that, then you might actually work out the best way of making the most of today's opportunities. Cancer, you're kind of tempted to just go into your own little world. That is because the moon is conjunct the south node in Libra. And from a Cancerian perspective, that represents where you would like to go. Moon conjunct south node in Libra from a Cancerian perspective is about the home. It's about your domestic environment. It's about where you feel safe. So Cancer, there's a big emphasis on feeling safe, and it's nice to feel safe. It's good to feel safe, but in terms of emotional safety, you can take things too far. And I think the challenge for you, Cancer, is to move out and to project yourself onto the wider world, because that, in a way, is where you should be going. And as I've told other signs, there is a conjunction between the North Node and Chiron. Now, this conjunction between North Node and Chiron, it's been around for a long time. It's not just a one-day wonder. But because the Moon is opposition the North Node and Chiron today, it comes into focus. And I think if you're able to go out there into the world, with particular emphasis on your working life, but it could be other areas. If you're able to do that, however painful it might be, okay, within reason. But if you don't want to do it, and if you don't want to do it, then you probably should do it. But if you can actually have a public profile, be seen. If you're working, making sure that you are seen and heard, then you can start to have a positive impact. And I think if you are working, there may be one of your workmates who is under the weather. They seem troubled about something, and you're actually in a position to do some healing there. After all, Chiron, Moon opposition Chiron. It is the struggle for Cancerians to make someone better, and making someone better, I suppose, based on their own vulnerabilities. You accept your own vulnerabilities, and through an acceptance of your own vulnerabilities and an understanding of your own vulnerabilities, you can start to address another person's vulnerabilities. And so that's probably the main focus today. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, the Moon, which is your ruler, is square Venus. Now, Venus is, it's a fortunate planet. It's the lesser benefic, but Moon square Venus can be a bit of a problem. It may be about the wrong kind of relationship. It may be about a partner who is just wanting attention, but is in some way being unhelpful, just having a completely wrong set of priorities, a set of priorities that might just be indulgent and annoying. And, I suppose the temptation is to give in to that person, do what they say, become part of their life. That's not a good idea. So, from a perspective of one-to-one relationships, I'm not convinced that you should spend much time on them. So if there's one special person in your life, they might be special, but today they might not. They shouldn't really be special. There are probably better things for you to be focusing on. Leo, the Sun is your ruler. And the Sun is, I'm afraid, today not in a very good position. Okay, let me qualify that. The Moon is making a trine to the Sun. That is an opportunity to make the Sun in a good position. That is an opportunity to make the most of the Sun's potential. But are you actually going to be able to pull it off? Possibly not. Now, the problem with the Sun is that the Sun is in Aquarius. The Sun does not work very well in Aquarius. The Sun is in its detriment in Aquarius, because it rules Leo, your star sign. But most importantly, the Sun is semisquare Neptune. The Sun is you. The sun is how you express yourself. And so when it's semisquare Neptune, your force can be seriously weakened. It can be undermined. Neptune is the sea. It's undermining the seawall. It's eroding things. It's confusing and it's deceiving. So you have to be very aware of it. Now, I'm not saying that it is inevitable that you get so badly knocked off your track. Neptune is an outer planet. It's a generational, it's a generational planet. It's transpersonal. It works at a very unconscious level. Perhaps you have the maturity to resist it, but all things being equal, I think most Leos are not going to be able to cope, and I think you're going to find that you get really caught up in your emotions. That your emotions are perhaps your worst enemy. Your sensitivity might be your worst enemy. Alternatively, I know that sensitivity is supposed to be something we're all supposed to cultivate, but sensitivity can get out of hand. And I think that today it certainly can get out of hand for Leos because the sun is semisquare. Is semisquare Neptune. Your emotions could lead you astray, and you could just find that you just don't have the strength to deal with them, with sun in Aquarius. And in the end, you could find that today you accomplish very little. You even may go backwards if you're not careful. So the question is, how do you deal with the situation? I think what you have to do, Leo, is you have to really look up beyond the clouds and the fog and the chaos around you, the chaos that in a way you are part of. And you need to be able to sort of get above the cloud level. You need to be able to see the big picture, and that is going to require an enormous amount of assertion on your part, an enormous amount of self-honesty. Are you able to? Can you do it? Yes, you can. Are you going to do it? I don't know. It's kind of up to you, and you might feel that one way round it is to talk to people. However, whether it's on the phone, face to face, and that certainly could be useful. I think you can have some amazing conversations today. But are those conversations going to be helpful? It may be that if you talk to people, because it seems the right thing to do, and lines of communication are certainly smooth, your own flawed views of the world may actually be reinforced. You may actually be just told what you already think is the case. And so talking to people, if they're the wrong people, could actually be worse than useless, because your own erroneous views might just be reinforced. Virgo. Virgo, you could get your priorities wrong today. Now, don't feel that I'm singling you out, because I'm being pretty negative today for most of the signs. So it's not personal. So today, Virgo, you could get your priorities completely wrong. I think the problem, Virgo, is that you could focus just too much on material detail. Yeah, I know material details matter. I know money matters. But you could just take things too far and ignore the things that really matter. So, what really matters? Okay, in terms of money, let me actually restate that. With money, at least from an astrological perspective, there are two ways of looking at money. There's money which it's personal, it's our bank account, it's our day-to-day bills. But then there is complicated money. There is a money that's perhaps connected with other people, where you've got joint financial arrangements. Maybe you've got sort of wills, trusts, that kind of money. And so today, Virgo, you may want to spend all your time looking at the surface level of money, looking at money on the surface, and that might be, as far as you're concerned, the main priority, and that might be what really matters, at least as far as you're concerned. But if you're going to do anything useful with money today, you've actually got to focus on the more complicated aspects of money. The money which is not just about today and tomorrow. It's about, it's about shared money. It's about money that's about what is your financial situation going to be like in 10 or 20 years' time. You've got to think about that. So if you're going to focus on money, if you insist on focusing on money, then I think it's going to be important that you really get down deep. And I think that's going to be important. And in terms of your emotions, I think you are actually quite sensitive today, and your sensitivity may be telling you that someone may be in a bit of trouble, because that's an important point today, not just for you, for a lot of the star signs. So your feelings might tell you that something is wrong with someone, and you may be in a position to step in quite a dramatic way and help them out. 2 minutes might be all it takes. In 2 minutes, you could really make someone's life a lot better. It doesn't take much of your time. But going back to money, so today there is a square aspect between the Moon and Venus, particularly strong if you're in Asia, Australia, New Zealand, but I still think we're going to feel it if we're in Western Europe or the Americas. Not least because the Moon is in Libra, Venus is in Capricorn, so they are in a square aspect in terms of signs. You might spend so much time focusing on money that you miss something really important. And while you're trying to sort out your money in one sense, you might be doing something else which is completely sabotaging your own financial situation. So there's something you're doing which is perhaps a drain on your finances, and you don't seem to be properly aware of it. And so that is something that you need to address. And the best way of addressing it, I suppose, is to be a typical Virgo. Virgos are supposed to look at the details, but right now there's a danger that you're only looking at some of the details. If you're going to look at the details, Virgo, you need to look at all of the details. And when you look at all of the details, I think you'll have a clearer idea about what needs to be done. Libra. Okay, the Moon is still moving through your star sign, and that might seem good, but could be a bit of a problem right now, because with the Moon moving through your star sign, some of your standard traits may be particularly strong. Typical Libra likes to compromise, likes to drift on the surface, doesn't want to rock the boat, looking for balance. That's very nice, but it's not really the right approach. I think that you need ideally to consider something different. That is your line of least resistance. What you should be doing is making a making, I think, a greater effort to be assertive. And I don't think that you should be too afraid of causing a bit of chaos and disruption. Now, Librans are quite capable of causing disruption. You know how to cause disruption because Libra is the sign of the balance. And so you understand the balance. And because you understand the balance, you know how to disrupt the balance. And so maybe this is a time when the balance needs to be disrupted. I think it's because around you people have been doing things in the same old way. They've been getting used to particular relationships around them. It's just been happening like this, and there hasn't been any change. Important things have been ignored. And Libra, if you're really evolved, I don't really like to use this concept of evolved in terms of star signs, but it's sometimes used. If you're an evolved Libra, you'll accept that the balance has to change, and that you do need to take some kind of initiative in order to disrupt this balance. Now, I think it's going to be hard, and matters are not made any easier by the fact that the moon in Libra is, making a square to Venus, your ruling planet. This aspect could be a problem, particularly if you're in Asia, Australia, New Zealand. But I think it's going to affect all of us. All Librans. I'm not a Libran. And there's just a fundamental laziness there. Laziness is actually a word, but it's sometimes assigned to Libra. When I first started learning astrology, I can't remember what the book was, but it was some book of star signs. It talked about lazy Libras, and I think there's a slight danger that Librans are lazy today. That they just don't do. They don't do what's expected of them, and they do the wrong things. Don't spend too much time, for example, with your friends. Your friends are unreliable, or your friends could be a distraction. If you spend time on the phone talking to someone, particularly if you know them well, they could lead you into areas that are just so completely useless that it's just not funny. So think about that very carefully. Now, I'm sorry to be so negative, and it's certainly not all bad, because there is a trine. Moon in Libra is trine the Sun in Aquarius. There is a natural fortuitous relationship between the Sun and the Moon, and I think this Sun-Moon trine is going to allow you to be very creative. It's going to allow you to tell the world what you can do. And that's really what you've perhaps got to do. You've got to say, I can do this. This is my special talent, and I'm not ashamed of it. And that's important, not being ashamed of it, because as a Libran, you're very focused on people's likes and dislikes, what is acceptable at a particular moment in time. But with this Sun trine Moon, it's all about not being ashamed. It's just saying, this is me. This is what I do. There are ways in which I can have a real and meaningful impact on the world around me, provided I have the space and freedom in which to do it. So that's something which perhaps, Libra, you should be focusing on. Scorpio. What you should be doing today, Scorpio, is getting the balance right. Now, I think, Scorpio, your immediate inclination today is going to drift off into your own little world. I don't think you're really in the mood for engaging. At least you're not in the mood for engaging if you just do things. If you just do things naturally. What is your natural impulse? What is your line of least resistance? Your line of least resistance is probably to do nothing, and to shy away from the world and its problems. And that, I don't think, is the right way to use today's energies. There are things that need to be done. Perhaps there are things that need to be organized. Maybe there are other people that need to be organized. And perhaps you need to step in and start doing some organization, perhaps in quite an assertive way. So if, Scorpio, you are in a position of any authority, whether it's in your family, among your friends, at work, and if you actually look around you, you'll start to see that things are a bit of a mess. And what you should be doing is being very assertive in dealing with this mess. It doesn't mean to say that you on your own have to sort it out. You have to perhaps make the effort to get other people to sort it out as well, because that is the way forward. And this mess does have to be sorted out, especially as today the sun is making a semisquare to Neptune. Now, in the Scorpio horoscope, the sun has a special relationship with sort of work, career, business, and the sun being semisquare Neptune, it means that your whole sense of direction is being undermined by Neptune. Neptune is a planet of chaos. Neptune is a planet of the sea. It just wears things down. And if you don't sort things out, everything is going to be worn down. Your plans for the future might be worn down. Structures that you've been building might be worn down. And so you have to address the situation now, and it may not just be about tidying things up. There may be certain things that actually need to be repaired or even replaced, because time wears everything down, doesn't it? So Scorpio, do bear that in mind. And I think if you just retreat from the world and just assume that everything is going to be fine, no, that's not the right approach. You really do need to be proactive. Now, finishing with relationships. I don't know. I'm not convinced that this is an area of your life that today you should be putting much energy into. I think it could waste a lot of your time. But particularly on a one-to-one level, yes, one-to-one relationships may be there, but if you spend too much time with one person, you may be asking where is it all going. You could spend more and more time with one person, and your time could be frittered away. And I just don't think on a one-to-one basis you're going to find true comfort, true harmony. Maybe tomorrow, maybe at a later stage, when the moon goes into your star sign later in the week, but maybe not now. Maybe you should be focusing on other things. Sagittarius, you want to interact with other people. That's fine. This is what happens when the moon is in Libra. Moon in Libra is a very sociable sign. But is it the right thing to do? I think there's a danger that if you spend time socializing, even on quite a trivial level, a lot of your time could be used up. And that might be a shame, because there is a certain tension between your social life, what you know, your all the various people around you that you know, and between you and what you can do, what you can make, what you can create. There's a tension there. So if you're spending time talking to someone, whether it's on the phone or face to face, you're taking away time from yourself, and you're taking away time from, you know, your capacity to create something really amazing. Because, you know, you can do it, but you do have to give yourself a chance. And the question is, are you going to be able to give yourself a chance? You know, it's just so easy to just focus on other people, other people's demands, other people's trivia, other people's gossip, other people's problems, and really you're forgetting yourself. So I think it's just very important that you put yourself first, because it's, in a way, by putting yourself first, you're putting other people first. Because by putting yourself first, that means that's you, the person who can, you know, act as a bright Sagittarian beacon, giving people new hope, new enthusiasm, a vision. That's you. But if you are spending time just talking to friends, talking about gossiping, that kind of thing, you're denying the world their light, if you like. I know that's a bit dramatic, but yes, you can be a shining beacon. That's the Sagittarian destiny, the Sagittarian ideal. Showing people the way, showing people, an exciting vision of the future. So you can see you have to get the balance right there. Try not to spend too long on the phone. I don't think it would be useful. And socializing, you know, parties, any lunches, suppers, social events like that, I think they should probably be avoided. They're easy to get involved in, but, you know, they could not, aside from being expensive, they could waste your valuable time. And, you know, when you are focusing on yourself and what you can do, then you're creating the possibility of doing something really special, because it does seem that Sagittarians have an opportunity to do something quite dramatic. They can bring something into the world. It's like you're forging armor, a sword, some kind of weapon. I don't mean a weapon in a sense of anything violent, but you're forging some instrument of progress. So in a way, you're sort of like the blacksmith, creating something amazing in the privacy of your workshop. And today you can start to reveal what you're doing. Okay, in the first instance, you might be ignored, but don't worry. Soon enough, people will start to realize what Sagittarius can actually achieve. And so, in that sense, you know, if you do the right thing, I think it can be a great day. Now, I should say something about relationships. So, sort of listening. You know, from listening to what I've said, you might say, well, I'm sort of somewhat down on relationships for you today. No, not really. There is at least one person who is on actually brilliant form today. There is someone who can listen to you, can appreciate you, and can give you amazing optimism. So you need to find that person. You know, there are a lot of people around you who are just dross, who are just not not really going to take you anywhere. They're not useful. They're going to waste a lot of your time. But there's one person, quite possibly sort of a partner, someone close to you, maybe a spouse, one person who is on absolutely brilliant form, and brilliant form in a way that you can benefit from. They're not going to waste your time. So what you have to do is identify that person. Now, that person might be, I don't know, might be a spouse, might be someone you're with all the time. If not, it could be someone else. Somewhere along the line, there is someone who is on brilliant form. So find out who that person is. They may be right in front of you, and make the most of everything they've got to offer. Capricorn, you're ambitious today, I think. You think that there are things that can be achieved. But I think if you just think about what needs to be done, there is going to be a certain sense of disappointment. Because really, your ambitions may not actually get very far. They could just your energy, your ambitious energy could start to flounder. It may flounder because you just don't get enough support. You might just find that other people are not on very good form. The people around you are just not able to handle you. They're not prepared to give you the enthusiasm you need, and it could, if you're not careful, end up as a quite wasted day. So how would you deal with that? I think, Capricorn, you perhaps need to start to ground things a bit. It's not enough just to go out there into the world and expect that things are just going to happen. Just expect that the world is just going to naturally balance out to your particular view. I think you have to revisit your fundamental sort of grounding of the situation. Work out what needs to be changed. And I think if you are working, it's probably going to work better if you do things sort of away from other people. It's probably better to work, for example, at home rather than to go away, to go to an office or something like that. I think you'll be more effective like that. So that is certainly something to consider. Now, when it comes to money, there is some little detail that could be a bother. I know that Capricorn is a sign that's often associated with good financial management. But today, I think there is a certain danger that your financial management comes astray, perhaps because you're given some false information, or perhaps because you've made a false assumption. So Capricorn, I think you need to reconsider your calculations. So whether it's money, I know in America it's tax season, you need to reconsider your assumptions. Perhaps you need to recalculate something. Or if you've been told something, you need to confirm it, maybe with an independent source. So that is that's something that you really do need to bear in mind. Finishing with relationships, there is certainly someone who is keen on you, who thinks you're great. It could be any form of relationship, not just a romantic relationship. But someone thinks you're great, and they are they're prepared to really listen to you. and to take advice from you. And I think that's possibly a good thing, but you do have to be careful. It's possible that if you give someone too much space, too much time, then your own ability to get things done and to make an impact could be weakened. So maybe in terms of relationships, you need to decide today how much time you're going to give someone and not go over time. Aquarius. It's a day when you may get really confused. That is because the sun is moving through your star sign, and the sun moving through your star sign is making a semi-square aspect to Neptune. There is something that could really confuse you, and could prevent you from really applying yourself in the way you would like to apply yourself. So that means you do have to be very careful when dealing with other people. And I would perhaps suggest that you don't get too close to any one person, unless you're doing it because you're trying to help someone deal with their own confusions. So it's not just you being confused, other people are confused because of this Sun semi-square Neptune. And of course, Sun rules Leo, your opposite sign. So you could be confused. But maybe, Aquarius, what your job is perhaps to bring people down to earth and to address their confusions and to work out what they need to do to get back on the tracks. So it's about listening to people, but not being influenced by them. Now, I am not saying that it's going to be a bad day. The moon is in Libra. It is making a trine aspect to the sun. The sun is in Aquarius, it's in your star sign, and the moon is in Libra, so in air signs. So there is a natural flow, and I think that you may be comforted by some of your ideas. You may see confirmation that your view of the world is the right view of the world, and things you hear, people you talk to, it all confirms that you're right, and that might feel incredibly comfortable. But Aquarius, do you really have all the answers? Just because your view of the world has been confirmed doesn't mean that your view of the world is correct. And just as this confirmation starts to happen, ideally you should be asking yourself questions. The more times people say you're right about something, the more you should consider the possibility, not that you're wrong, but you've only got, say, 75% of the truth. Some of that truth still needs to be discovered, and perhaps today, Aquarius, that is your task. Don't be satisfied with some of the truth. Don't be satisfied with probabilities that look good. You have to go further. You have to discover that missing bit, and I think that is a challenge. And Aquarius, what really mustn't happen today. Don't allow yourself to be flattered, because if you're being flattered, if people are telling you how wonderful you are, that in fact is a sure sign that something is wrong and something needs to be sorted out. Pisces. Well, Pisces, it's a day when you might be quite introspective. You might take the view that the world is heavy. There are dramatic things going on in the world, and that you just need to sort of keep a low profile and just engage with your feelings, and perhaps not discuss these feelings, because these feelings are quite private, and that may be your view of the world. Is it the right view of the world? Probably not. I think you do need to give something away, and I think there's a danger, Pisces, that you exaggerate your own importance. You particularly exaggerate your own emotional importance. It's not healthy today to get obsessed with your feelings. They're not taking you anywhere positive, anywhere meaningful. You need to, if you possibly can, try to come down to earth. That does matter, and on a very basic level, there's money, for example. Simple money, time spent dealing with your own personal finances in a very grounded way. Not thinking that the whole world is intense. Just thinking that in many respects, at least in terms of what your perception should be today, that living in the world is about being able to make sure the books balance. And that's all that it is. I know that sounds a horribly materialistic thing to say, but maybe for the moment, that's what it's all about, Pisces. Making sure that your expenditures are matched by your income. But I really must emphasize that there are some powerful feelings that are trying to intrude on you. It's because there is a sun. The sun is semisquare Neptune. Now, Neptune, of course, does not rule Pisces, because Neptune Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. Nonetheless, Neptune is moving through your star sign. And I think that Neptune has a certain affinity with Pisces. And so with the Sun semisquare Neptune, there is a tendency, as I've already suggested, that the chaos of your feelings could sort of drag you down, which is why you've got to be as grounded as possible. And perhaps that is a challenge. But today you've got to be grounded. It's thinking about money. It's not that necessarily just that money is important, but money is something grounding. Thinking about how you can make your impression felt in the real world. Try not to exist in the shadows of your unconscious, because right now I don't think that is a very useful place to be. But perhaps the way out of this mess, I don't say mess, but it's just a bit muddy today. So you need to get out of the mud. So to get out of a mud, you may need someone's assistance. There is at least one person out there. I said this to Sagittarius as well, because Sagittarius and Pisces have this thing in common, but they're opposite signs. So your opposite sign is Virgo. Sagittarius's opposite sign is Gemini, and both Virgo and Gemini are ruled by Mercury. There is something about Mercury. Mercury represents the other person, and by looking at the structure of Mercury, we can see that there is someone out there who is really quite optimistic and enthusiastic, and certainly not the kind of person that is going to want to spend all their time just obsessing about emotional detail. So look for this person. There is someone out there who can drag you out of the mud. So find out who this person is, and because they can be a big help, and yes, they can help you to achieve all of your potential. So that is my view of the 12 signs. I'm sorry to have been so negative, but tomorrow is another day. And what I want to do now is look at the I Ching. So, as always, I asked a question about the day. What is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching segment of this video? So the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 13, which is fellowship with men. Now, I think we should understand fellowship with men in a sort of a non-gendered way. Fellowship with people, fellowship with men, however, whatever sounds better. So it is a time when we are actually focusing on how we relate to the world around us, how we get on with the people around us. And I kind of think that was reflected in the astrology. How we relate to people, how whether or not we're strongly influenced by people, whether we're assertive, questions about leadership. That's all important today. So yeah, fellowship with men is certainly something that's going to be important. But there are two moving lines here. The second line moves and the fourth line moves. So those moving lines are telling us what this social situation is actually about. And the second line is actually not very easy. Yes, the right way forward is to have fellowship with men. But the trouble is that in the first instance, there is a lot of mistrust. We do not get on with people. We don't trust them. And so because we don't trust them, how can there be fellowship with men? And the I Ching is basically saying, this is the way it is. We have to accept that the lack of trust is just holding things up. And so if you're wondering, why things aren't moving, it may be to do with your own lack of trust, or perhaps there's someone out there who doesn't trust you, and it's going to be very difficult to find that trust. And as the day progresses, we get another line moving, the fourth line moving, which is almost implying a conflict situation. It's us against them, and it's a conflict situation where we might be tempted to think about winners and losers, but that's not the case. No one's going to win this. It's just going to be about two groups of people that aren't strong enough to overcome each other. And so through that acceptance that whatever the conflict, whatever the disagreements we have with people, we're not going to be able to overcome them. And they're going to accept it as well. They're going to accept that back. So you might have two parties, both of them are strong, but neither of them are strong enough to overcome the other. So that's what fellowship with men means. Fellowship with men means is how we relate to other people. And right now, how we relate to other people isn't great because of those moving lines. And this hexagram, because we've got two moving lines, it does move to a second hexagram. And it moves to hexagram number 9, the taming power of the great. And I think what this is telling us, and I think it reinforces the previous hexagram, is that we have to recognize that if we're trying to accomplish something, especially if we're trying to accomplish something which is sort of zero-sum, in other words, our gain is someone else's loss, particularly in that kind of situation, we have to recognize that we're not strong enough yet. The I Ching, of a Wilhelm translation of the I Ching, talks about dense clouds but no rain. We might feel our strength, but really we're not strong enough to see it through. All we can be satisfied is small movements. And so that is the taming part of the great. We ourselves need to be tamed. We need to accept our limitations. We just need to accept that right now we're not in a position to do what we're trying to achieve. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? you might have been thinking that you're going to achieve it right now, this minute, or tomorrow, or whatever. It's going to take time, and we need to build up our strength before we're ready to take it through, to move to the next level. So I think in this instance, I think a bit of patience is required. Okay, so having done the I Ching, I want to now look at America. My approach is going to be, I think, fairly chaotic. I just want to look at a lot of charts. Okay, I don't say a lot of charts, but I want to look at some charts and just try to consider, what might actually be going on. Now I was actually thinking about Pluto in Aquarius, and I was thinking, what is Pluto in Aquarius actually about? Pluto does go back into Capricorn, and I suppose, when Pluto goes back into Capricorn towards the end of the year, the United States has its Pluto in Capricorn, and now Pluto is in Aquarius. But in a way, when Pluto goes back into Capricorn, when does it go back into Capricorn? Sorry, let me just look that up. Pluto goes into Capricorn very briefly, 2nd of September, just for 2.5 months. But that period just before the election is going to really bring into focus that America's Pluto return, Pluto return. Yes, technically the Pluto return is finished, but it's going to come back into focus later in the year. I'm fairly confident about that. I suppose that's in the run-up to the election. And I was looking back at previous times when Pluto was in Capricorn, and I was looking at the Edict of Milan. Now, forget everything in this chart except for Pluto. The Edict of Milan was in 313 AD, in February 313 AD. We don't know, as far as I can see, we don't know what date. So yes, this is the chart for the Edict of Milan I've taken mid-February. So basically you can forget everything pretty much except the outer planets. So the Edict of Milan was when Pluto was in Aquarius, was when the Emperor Constantine sort of had brought in toleration for Christianity. I mean, I'm sure that's a very vague way of viewing it, and other religions. So Rome was Leo. That's what Rome is. And Aquarius is the opposite sign to Leo. And you could argue that Constantine's acceptance of Christianity and the Roman religion was really started to be put under pressure, because now you start to tolerate other religious practices. Perhaps that was the beginning of the end for one aspect of the Roman Empire. And so maybe with Pluto in Aquarius now, it just shows how much things can change. And I suppose with Pluto moving into Aquarius, there may be a certain end of empire feel to that, because empire is perhaps arguably about Leo, the sun. And so with Pluto in the opposite sign, that could be end of empire. The sun is the end of monarchy. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius was the end of the 18th century. So if you're in the United States, Pluto in Aquarius, that's when you lost the British king. Sun, Leo, the king, Pluto in the opposite sign. Or if you were in France, the king, the Pluto was in Aquarius during the French Revolution, with Louis the 16th eventually losing his head. So I think with Pluto, there is an argument here that Pluto in Aquarius might be the end of empire. Now, the Emperor Constantine, it's not that he did the empire in, but he was bringing in something quite new. Remember, Pluto in Aquarius can be about the new, having religious toleration with the Edict of Milan. And so, Edict of Milan, there was Pluto at 10 Aquarius in February 313. And, this does make me think in terms of why the West is behaving in such a crazy way. Particularly in terms of Ukraine and Russia. I think the West understands at an unconscious level. Certainly the leaders in the West, understand that the game is up. And I think the game has been up since the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the end of 2020. There was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I've set this for London, it doesn't matter. But, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was at 0 degrees Aquarius. And as I've said before, I associate Aquarius with the East. Not just Russia, but perhaps China, maybe this whole sort of BRICS. And so Western leaders know that the game is up. And I think this is perhaps why they are so desperate to throw resources into Ukraine. Because they know this is the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the end for Western dominance, and I think that is the backdrop, and I think that helps explain why leaders in the West are being so crazy. They almost seem to be risking nuclear war on the surface, just for part of eastern Ukraine. But as far as what's been happening right now, of course, we've got the Middle East to worry about. And we had the attack on, TAR 22. So TAR 22, I don't know precisely what time the TAR attack was. Forget the precise chart, and forget the location. This was it's sort of eastern Jordan, the part of Jordan that was a desert. This sort of outpost in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the desert. And I'm thinking that, why are they there? There are Americans in Syria. America has an illegal occupation of Syria. What are they doing there? I don't know. They say that this attack took place in Jordan. But it's right on the border. I think this TAR 22 place is on the border between Iraq, Syria, and Jordan. And what I kind of found interesting about this chart, aside from the fact that Pluto has just gone into Aquarius when the attack came, I don't know. By the way, I don't know what time the attack was. It was early morning on Sunday the 28th, I think. I went for 3 a.m., but I don't know when it happened. I couldn't find it out. But what I found interesting, there was this Mercury-Mars conjunction at 1753, 1737 Aquarius. And this conjunction does actually hit Joe Biden's chart. Let me show you what I mean. So 1718 Aquarius it would be about here, but it's semisquare his Uranus on a descendant. Pretty much exactly, and of course we don't know precisely when he was born. We've gone for 830. So that Mercury-Mars conjunction definitely hit Biden. I kind of feel I should have noticed it, actually, if I had. I do like to look at people who are going to be affected over the coming week, and I kind of should have noticed that. And so, remember, Joe Biden is the head of state in America. He is because he's the head of state, he kind of is America. Now, you might say that he is a weak president, he's cognitively impaired, that other people are making all the decisions. It doesn't matter. It's the formality of the position. He is American president. He is the king. The king is the land, and the land is the king. And so, when that Mercury-Mars conjunction hit him, it it was hitting his seventh house, and hitting his Uranus, hitting his descendant. And remember, Joe Biden, he has Uranus on the seventh. This is why he is a dangerous president, having Uranus on the seventh house cusp, because with Uranus on the seventh house cusp, you project onto other people. And of course, the United States has Uranus on the seventh house cusp. There's America's chart. I think it's born around 5:10 p.m. That's when the Declaration of Independence was signed. And you can see that, Uranus is pretty close to the descendant. In fact, you've got a Mars-Uranus opposition on a descendant. And so there are planets moving towards that Mars-Uranus opposition. And we have to remember that later in the year, Jupiter goes into Gemini. And I think Jupiter going into Gemini is going to be a major problem for America. Now, I know that we think we all think there are problems right now, because it seems that there's going to be some kind, people are going to predicting some kind of war with Iran. Are we going to have a war with Iran? Well, the Iranians are not stupid. The Iranians don't want a war with America. Does America want a war with Iran? I don't know. But things are starting to look difficult. And Jupiter is still in Taurus. Now, why is that important? Well, because Jupiter eventually is going to go into Gemini. Although Jupiter in Taurus is arguably important, because if you look at the Tower 22, attack, Jupiter was at 654 Taurus. So if you then look at the moment that Biden was inaugurated president, you will notice that at Biden's inauguration, there was an exact Mars-Uranus conjunction at 644 Taurus. So Jupiter was exactly conjunct the Mars-Uranus conjunction of Joe Biden's inauguration. Now, you might think that Jupiter is a fortunate planet. Well, not really. It makes things bigger. It expands things. It turns potential into reality. So this is very worrying, that with Jupiter on the Biden inauguration chart, this was a moment that Biden became president, that when Jupiter hit that Mars-Uranus conjunction, that was when we had the attack on Tower 22, and that makes us concerned about what the response is going to be. Now, the president elected at the end of 2020 was always going to be inaugurated at this time. If Trump had won, then you could say then this would have been his inauguration chart. But I don't think it would have been such a powerful chart, because he was already president. But any new president inaugurated at this time, January the 20th, 2021, would have had that Mars-Uranus conjunction there. I mean, that was what was going on today. And so that Mars-Uranus represents a very destructive potential. Particularly when you look at the fact that this Mars-Uranus conjunction is square this Sun-Jupiter-Saturn conjunction here. So the Biden inauguration chart was really catastrophic, and I noticed this at the time, that this is the inauguration of a president who is going to get America into a lot of trouble. Now, there is something, and although I have talked about the inauguration chart before, what I haven't talked about is some of the spacings on this. Now, this Sun Saturn-Jupiter conjunction, you would notice that Sun and Saturn are about 3 degrees apart. Just over 3 degrees apart. 052 Aquarius to 356 Aquarius. Then Jupiter and Saturn are about 3.5 degrees apart. So Saturn is on the Sun-Jupiter midpoint. But from a solar arc point of view, 1 degree equals 1 year. So if something is 3 degrees apart, we might expect something after 3 years. Now, 3 years after January the 20th, 2021, and a bit, is like now. So that Sun to Saturn, the full potential of that Sun-Saturn conjunction, when it becomes exact after 3 degrees, when the Sun moves by symbolic measure, 1 degree for 1 year, when it moves by symbolic measure to Saturn, is now. And we are starting to see the full malefic potential now of this inauguration. Let's not be exact to 1 day. It's we could be really exact about it, but it's generally about 3 years into the presidency. And likewise, Saturn moving to Jupiter. That's 3.5 years. So we may start to see that manifest. 3.5 years would probably take us into the summer. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I think that the summer is quite a difficult time. But before I look at the summer, I just wanted to very quickly look at the charts of 2 people who are closely involved with the Biden regime. One of them is Antony Blinken, and the other is Lloyd Austin. So Antony Blinken is Secretary of State. He is America's chief diplomat. I think the general consensus seems to be that he's doing a really bad job. He doesn't seem to be able to communicate with the people he should be able to communicate with. You have got a potential war you have got a war with Russia. Antony Blinken is not doing a good job at dealing with the problem. He's not doing a good job in the Middle East. He's not doing a good job in terms of America's relationship with China. And I think we can expect worse things from Antony Blinken. So let me just have a look at Antony Blinken's chart. Now, I don't have a time of birth for Antony Blinken. I just have April 16th, 1962. I've looked at his chart before. I pointed out that he has got Jupiter on aspecting the Mars-Saturn midpoint. Jupiter on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, Mars-Saturn is about death. Jupiter on the Mars-Saturn death. It's just like him enthusiastically getting involved in things that lead to people dying. That's one way of doing it. If he wanted to be really bad, you could say, well, getting off on death. How does he respond when, I don't know, when the Ukrainians bomb Donetsk, civilians in Donetsk or Belgorod, what those American weapons are doing. The Ukrainians are using some of those weapons for shelling civilians in Donbass and Russia. American cluster munitions, but that's not really the main point of what I wanted to talk about today. So what I actually hadn't noticed, and I perhaps should have noticed, was the positions of Mars and Neptune. So if you look at Blinken's chart, he has got Mars at 2740 Pisces. He's got Mars on Skeet. Skeet is a star often connected with shipwrecks, disasters, general chaos, and Mars is, it's sesquiquadrate Neptune. So this is someone who is the Secretary of State, who has a big hand in military action and so forth. And his Mars semi-sesquiquadrate Neptune is like ill thought out military action, being assertive in ways that are confused, but he doesn't really know what he's doing, and ending up, the situation ending up as being a disaster. Now, you will notice that right now, Neptune is at 25, 26 Pisces. So actually Neptune is moving toward, transiting Neptune is moving towards a conjunction with Blinken's Mars. And when it hits the conjunction with Blinken's Mars, it will also be sesquiquadrate his Neptune. So Blinken's Mars-Neptune sesquiquadrate is starting to activate. I think this is really dangerous. We should not have a Secretary of State in the USA who has got this kind of transit. I think in March he has Neptune exactly sesquiquadrate his Mars. So I think that Blinken doesn't know what he's doing. He's confused. He's probably getting the wrong intelligence, and he is right now liable to be making serious mistakes. Oh, also don't notice he's got Venus opposition Neptune. A diplomat's supposed to get on with people, form the right relationships. Venus is a planet of relationships. He's got Venus opposition Neptune. That's not great, is it? Then we've got Lloyd Austin. He's defense. Defense is his brief, isn't it? He's just come out of hospital. You'd expect him to have a good Mars, wouldn't you? If you want someone who can, someone responsible for the nation's defence. His Mars is at 625. I don't have his time of birth. His Mars is at 625 Leo. It's exactly 45 degrees from Neptune. So he's got a Mars-Neptune semisquare. Blinken's got a Mars-Neptune sesquiquadrate. This is bad, particularly in the current situation when this theme is really starting to repeat itself. And I think this is major cause for concern. Lloyd Austin and Antony Blinken both having Mars-Neptune 45, 135 degree aspects. Again, these people don't really know how to deal with the information coming their way, and they are very vulnerable to deception. But I think Blinken has got the real problems because Neptune is about to move on to his Mars. You don't really want to have someone as Secretary of State who has got Neptune transiting his Mars when he's dealing with wars in potentially several different locations. Now, as far as what is going on, and in the United States, Jupiter is about to go into Gemini. Not immediately, but just to give you an idea, let's look at an ingress chart. This is actually the chart for when the June the 20th, 2024, when the Sun goes into Cancer. And we can see that Jupiter at this stage is at 5 degrees Gemini. So Jupiter goes over Biden's ascendant a bit earlier, just in the early summer. But Jupiter is now starting to move towards the United States' ascendant, and that could be a problem. Why? Well, if you look at the Pearl Harbor chart. At Pearl Harbor, Jupiter was at 16 Gemini. So Jupiter had just crossed the USA's ascendant and was sort of on its close to its Mars Uranus midpoint. There's the USA's chart. Jupiter was around here. Now, don't forget, you might think, oh, Jupiter, it's a fortunate planet. Not when it's going over the descendant. Absolutely not. This can bring the United States into a wider war. I'm not saying it will happen, but I think with Jupiter crossing the U.S. descendant, we have a Pearl Harbor moment or a 9/11 moment? I think it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Jupiter could definitely do that. I mean, I think there is an argument for saying that America is going to be much more vulnerable in, say, 4 years' time, in 2028. I'll come on to that in a moment. But yes, with Jupiter hitting the ascendant, America's ascendant, that is difficult. Although we shouldn't forget Saturn. Saturn is currently at what, six Pisces. So on February the 21st. So in about 3 weeks' time, Saturn will be square. The USA's Uranus. Then a month later, there'll be Saturn square the USA's descendant. So that will just Saturn will hit both the ascendant and the descendant. So that is certainly worrying. And I think, I do think we're seeing evidence here that as the year progresses, the full malefic potential of Biden's chart and the inauguration chart are going to really start to manifest. Now, one other thing that worries me, going back to the inauguration chart, that there's a Mars-Uranus conjunction at exactly 640 Taurus. And that's the potential for war, for terrorism, for just wanting a fight. And that also means that the Biden administration is going to be very vulnerable to the Mars-Uranus cycle. And so if you were to get a Mars-Uranus conjunction in the sky, particularly in Taurus, that could be a problem. Now, in July, there is a Mars-Uranus conjunction. It's not just any Mars-Uranus conjunction. The Mars-Uranus conjunction is at around 26 Taurus, so it's on Algol, Caput Algol, the head of the demon, which is a star at around 26 Taurus, which is incredibly malefic. And so, again, we're perhaps looking for a summer of horrors here, and I think that is something that we do need to consider. I'm going to go into more detail about this, but I just wanted in this video just to sort of have a scatter and to raise some concepts, some things that I've already discussed, but to also start to think about the summer of 24, and indeed not just the summer, but the whole of 2024, particularly in light of this attack on TAR 22. Now, finally, there is this theory that Uranus in Gemini has a particular association with America going into wars. I was an Israeli friend was talking about that, and she'd seen an Israeli astrologer on, I think, YouTube who had mentioned this. I don't know his name, but I think the videos were in Hebrew. But he was pointing out that Uranus in Aquarius represents the United States getting involved in wars. I mean, in one sense, we have the starting position. Uranus the United States was born with the United States with Uranus in Gemini, and of course straight away it was getting involved in its war against its war against Britain. Then, however many years later, then a bit later, it had the Civil War. So here's the Civil War. I don't know. Probably people will argue about what the start of this, when the Civil War started. So this is was this the first shot? I don't know. I mean, sure, Civil War historians can argue with this, but this is for Charleston, South Carolina. April the 12th, 1861. Notice there's a Mars-Uranus conjunction. Certainly Uranus is in Gemini. There's that Mars-Uranus conjunction. Go back to the USA has got a Mars-Uranus conjunction. Then we have got we've got Pearl Harbor. Where's Pearl Harbor, you can see, okay, Uranus wasn't quite in Gemini, but Uranus was about to go into Gemini at the time of Pearl Harbor. And of course, by the time America was really committed to Europe and its wars, Uranus was in Gemini. So for most of the United States' Second World War, the Uranus was in Gemini. Then when is the next time Uranus goes into Gemini? Well, here is, to give you an idea, here is the here's the position of the planets on January the 20th, 2028. So by then, Mars is heading towards a conjunction with Gemini. So given past form, it seems very, very likely that the United States will be in some kind of war by the end of the decade. Now, I'm not making a prediction there, but if we just follow the pattern, War of Independence, Civil War, Second World War, 1, 2, 3. What about the fourth time? Perhaps, and particularly dangerous time during the summer of 2028, when Mars conjuncts Uranus. So, given those circumstances, why on earth would you elect a president who has got Uranus in Gemini? Okay, we've had other presidents with Uranus in Gemini, but Uranus in Gemini on the seventh house cusp. That is not good. Joe Biden is a dangerous president with that Uranus in the position it's in, and then with the inauguration chart having that Mars-Uranus conjunction, that exact Mars-Uranus conjunction. So yeah, Joe Biden is a very dangerous president, and he is the country. And okay, he will not be president in 20. Well, hold on. If Joe Biden gets re-elected in 2024, that means, and he stays alive and manages to complete his second term, that means towards the end of his second term, he will have that Mars-Uranus conjunction will have happened in the last few months of his second term. So perhaps America will be at war by the end of his second term, if you take the view that Uranus in Gemini is unfailingly predicting war for the United States. I'm not saying it is. Maybe in astrology, actually, the moment you notice a pattern, the pattern starts to break. So I thought I would end this video on an optimistic note. Okay, yes, so thank you for listening. Sorry this video was a bit chaotic. I just wanted to look at various threads and maybe in other videos pick them up. I need to go into more detail about this Jupiter and Gemini, I've just sort of alluded it, but I don't think it's going to work well for America, Jupiter and Gemini. Remember, Jupiter is in the sign of its detriment in Gemini. You know, Jupiter rules Sagittarius, therefore its opposition, therefore it's in its detriment in Gemini. So that could be difficult. Anyway, thank you for bearing with me. If you enjoyed the video or found the video useful, I'd be grateful if you liked it. If you liked it and you enjoyed the video and you're not subscribed, I'd be grateful if you subscribed. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.